First of all, today is Chodesh Menachem Av, as everybody knows, and it's the yard site of Aaron HaKohen. And it's the only yard site found in the Chumash. In other words, the only tzaddik whose actual date of yard site is recorded in Torah is Aaron HaKohen. Even Moshe Rabbenu, the way we determined that he passed away and was born in Zayin Oded is indirect from Sefer Yeshua, that we know that they crossed the Yidden and Yud Nisan. But in the Chumash it doesn't say Moshe Rabbeinu's yard site. It says about his ptira, about his histalkos, but it doesn't speak about his yard site. And nor does it mention the yard site of any of the other tzaddikim, the Avis and the Imois. The only yard site, the only date of a tzaddik who passed away who's mentioned in Chumash is Aaron. And why the Eibusha does that, I'm sure he has many reasons, but it certainly tzarech limud. It screams and shouts at us, and it clearly is relevant, and what we learn from it is very evident, very obvious, because it's Reish Chodesh of Chodesh Av. And of course, Chodesh Av, as it says in the Shulchan Aruch, Mishenicht Nasav Mematin B'Simcha, Av is not a Freilich Chodesh, is not a happy month by Yidden. The Chodesh Habayis, the Chodesh Beis Hamikdash took place on Tisha B'Av, but it's not just the day, it's considered the Chodesh, at least the beginning of the Chodesh is not considered such a favorable time. It's a sad time. It says in the Gemara that if you have it in Torah with a din, a mishpat, with a goy, you shouldn't do it in the 3 weeks and so on. And as the Gemara tells us that the source, the cause for all of the negative things associated with Chodesh Av has to do with sinas chinam. With sinas chinam, as we mentioned last week on the way out, unfortunately we didn't have enough time, means hatred that's not based on a basis, on a purpose, on a problem, on a taineh. It's based on a simple lack of tolerance. If somebody else has success, a person who's jealous, who has kina and tachlus in his disposition, in his mahus, in his essence, and hasn't worked to be mavader, to correct and to refine and to redirect these energies, just cannot tolerate somebody else's success. And as we discussed last week, the example for sinas chinam in Torah is Midian. That Midian got involved in a war that had nothing to do with them. Moav had a problem with Klal Yisrael. Midian hated Moav more than hated the Yidden, it would seem. And yet there was an opportunity to start off with Yidden. Midian and Moav suddenly became friends, and Midian was involved, and therefore Hashem says that it is Moshe Rabbenu personally who has to defeat Midian, because the evil of sinas chinam, of a hatred which has no basis, requires Moshe Rabbenu himself. It can't be done by anybody less than him. And as people are probably familiar in the Gemara actually relates the story that brought about the Churban, and it was a circumstance of sinas chinam, but the nishvat tragen, another person wasn't tolerated. And the Rebbe mentions all the time in the Sichos, he used to say this again and again, that we know a klal, that botla hasiba, botla hamasubav. If you eliminate the cause, you immediately and automatically and directly eliminate the effect. If something happened because of something else. So if you remove this cause, the symptoms go away. That's how it is. If a person has a rash, and the rash is because of a virus, and you remove the virus, the rash will go away. And the same is true also. If the Churban Beis Hamikdash, Mipnei Chatainu Galina Me'atzeinu, has to do with sinas chinam, and we replace it with ahavas chinam, with a love for one another, which is taka chinam. Chinam means for no reason. The person has no redeeming qualities, doesn't deserve to be loved. Mitzat shluya bedova, there's nothing about that person that warrants, that's the basis for liking that person. You just like that person unconditionally. That's the antidote, that's the opposite, that's the reversal of sinas chinam. So if you remove the siba, you immediately remove the mesubah. If you remove the cause for the Churban Habayis and Golos Hashchin and everything else, automatically there is the Binyan Habayis. And that's why B'chlal Yidden should koch more, should be preoccupied with Avos Yisrael. And like it says the Lashon of the Gemara, Nagu kavod zeh b'zeh. Kavod zeh b'zeh doesn't mean I honor the other person because I agree with that other person. I honor that other person even if I don't agree with the other person, like it's explained about Talmid Rabbi Akiva. Could be we spoke about it like by midtime. And this brings about the end of the basis for the Churban, so it builds the Beis Hamikdash. So B'Hashgacha Pratis, Aaron HaKohen's yard site is Chodesh Menachem Av. The whole life and experience of Aaron, as it's found in Torah, is one of Avas Yisrael. Aaron's life was Ish HaChesed, a man of kindness, and his whole Metzius was Avas Yisrael. Like it's written in the Pirkei Avos, in the first Pedic, that Hillel said, Havei mi Talmidav shel Aaron, we should try to be, we should be as Talmidav shel Aaron, as the disciples of Aaron HaKohen. And what's Aaron HaKohen's midah? Oyev shalom, v'roidev shalom, oyev esabriyes, v'makarvam l'Torah. That Aaron HaKohen loved everybody. And it's incidentally, because Aaron HaKohen loved everybody, everybody loved Aaron HaKohen. Rashi says in Chumash twice that there were more Yidden who loved Aaron than loved Moshe Rabbenu. That when Aaron HaKohen passed away, everybody cried. And when Moshe Rabbenu passed away, only the Talmidei Chachamim cried, Kol Bnei Yisrael. And by Aaron it says Kol Beis Yisrael. And the reason was because Moshe Rabbenu is Torah, Moshe is Emes. And because Moshe is Emes, Moshe reveals the truth. Sometimes the truth hurts. The truth can be very painful. Everybody knows that what the truth is. Truth is very important, but the truth is also oftentimes difficult to swallow, to absorb, to accept. But Moshe was Emes, so he had to say the Emes whether people liked it or not. And Aaron was Chesed. Aaron loved Yidden. And as it says in Sfarim, that Aaron used to go around to be matal shalom b'nish le'ishtei, to make people like each other. How? If there was a chalukei deis, if there was a falling out of sorts, as the expression is, between Reuven and Shimon, or between Reuven and Leah, b'nish le'reyehu, b'nish le'ishtei. So Aaron would go to each of the two principles separately, and he would be meshane emes. He wouldn't lie, not allowed to lie, but he would make the truth come across in a way that gave the bar plukta, the two counterparts, the impression that they've overestimated the degree, the measure of animosity, of mistrust, of hatred there is from Reuven to Shimon, or from Shimon to Reuven. He would say to Reuven, Shimon wants to be your friend. I know, I spoke to him. And he would say to Shimon that Reuven wants to be his friend. I know, I spoke to him. So when Reuven and Shimon would meet, the bitterness, the edge had been taken out of their animosity, and there was a great opportunity to bring people closer together. And Aaron HaKohen loved Yidden, and he devoted his life to be matal shalom b'nish le'ishtei. That was his thing. And as the diak in the Mishnah is oyev esabriyes. What is the translation of the word oyev esabriyes? It says that the translation of the word briyas means, in English, it's he loved creatures. Creature means a bashefanish, something that David made. But the connotation of the word beria is an entity, a person, that has no redeeming qualities other than the fact that Hashem made him. He's not a chocham, he's not a chazdan, he's not anything, but he's a beria. And as the Meibish is a bashefanish, David made him. Adam loved him. Adam loved everybody. He loved all Yidden. He loved them unconditionally. And he didn't only love them, but he negotiated. He worked to create Ava and Achva and Shalom and Reyes between Yidden. So it's more than coincidental. It's a clear Hashgacha Pratis that Chodesh Menachem Av is the yahrzeit of Aaron HaKohen, whose whole life is Avas Yisrael, and the whole union of Chodesh Menachem Av is not Chas v'Shalom Sinas Chinam. It's the correction of Sinas Chinam. Right? All of the challenge is that the Tzaf Kol Sof Mashiach should come, and Mashiach comes, like it says in the Gemara, from Tshuva, and the Tshuva includes very significantly Avas Chinam, love from one year to another. Chinam means for no reason. And it's precise that the yahrzeit of Aaron HaKohen is on Rosh Chodesh Menachem Av. And the explanation, at least briefly, is because it says in Sfarim that when you want to describe the beginning of something, the Hebrew word for a beginning is not Rosh. It's not the Rosh Hashanah, it's not the Rosh Chodesh. It's Tchila. Tchilas Hashanah, Tchilas HaChodesh. And yet in Torah, in Chazal, Rosh Hashanah is not called Tchilas Hashanah, the beginning of the year, it's called the head of the year. And Rosh Chodesh is not called the beginning of the month, it's called the head of the month. The difference between the beginning and the head is obvious. The beginning means the beginning. This is the beginning of the table. The food will taste the same here, whether you're sitting here or you're sitting there, you're sitting any place in the middle. The head, on the other hand, indicates what? An Eiver Kloli. The head is the beginning of a person, but it's not only the beginning of the person. The neshama is in the brain. The brain distributes the highest life to all of the various Eivarim and Giddim in the goof. And the brain feels, is margish the whole goof. And the brain brings an achdus into the whole goof. So the head is not just the first limb, so to speak, or organ. It's the head, it's the source, it's the basis for the function and for the life and to the integration of the whole person, of the whole Levitic and Metzias. And as a result, the word Rosh Rosh, when it's used for Rosh Hashanah, when it's used for Rosh Chodesh, is not that it's the first day of the year. It's the head of the year. What happens Rosh Hashanah affects the whole year. The Gemara says that Rosh Hashanah is determined what kind of parnasa we're going to have, and of course it goes both ways. The Eibishter makes judgment on Rosh Hashanah, and Rosh Hashanah can be ois beten, a Yid can daven, and ois beten, and poil kvayachal effect. And the Eibishter, like it says in Chazal, that the Eibishter HaKadosh Baruch Hu misava with tfilas and shal tzadikim. Right? I've mentioned this point in the past. It's that the Eibishter says to Moshe, I'm not going to give you something, and Moshe davens, and the Eibishter gives it to him. So Rashi says, what's this? That Moshe Rabbenu was being told by the Eibishter that if you daven, and then I'm going to give you what you want. In other words, sometimes things are not good, and the reason they're not good is precisely because the Eibishter wants us to ask for them. There's a whole story with the Baal Shem Tov, which I'm not going to tell you, Gavaldika Maisa, but maybe one time, another time. Okay. You know what, if there be time at the end of the class, it's a Gavaldika story to tell, and I don't think I ever told it here. But the point is that Rosh Hashanah can be nice, but Yid can daven for all good things. And in a smaller way, that's what Rosh Chodesh is. Rosh Chodesh is the first day of the month, but it's the head of the month. And what happens on the head of the month affects the entirety of the Chodesh, and it's especially relevant for women, because Rosh Chodesh is a Yom Tov exclusively for women, to the exclusion of men. There's in Yonim that women don't do Rosh Chodesh, that men do, because this is a Yom Tov that was given to women. So Rosh Chodesh Av benches, it gives a koyach for the whole Chodesh Av. So when you look at Chodesh Av, and you see various events that indicate the opposite of Avas Yisrael, so the Torah writes in the Chumash, you should know that before all of these bad things happened, there already was an Aaron HaKohen who passed away on this day. So he says, what Chassidishe teaches us about the yahrzeit, about the passing away of any person, especially of a tzaddik, is not chas v'shalom that their koyach goes away, but that the whole life of a tzaddik, and in this case Aaron HaKohen, comes to a sach hakoil, it comes to a maskone, it comes to a conclusion, it comes to a resolution on the day that a person passes away in a yahrzeit, and it's histalkus. And the upayil yeshuis, bekerev aretz, the day a person passes away, they can give more to the world than on any other day. So Aaron's passing away, Rosh Chodesh, is before all the tzaddik. This is another illustration of the Hagdama to the Four Lamaki, see in Chumash, that before all of the things connected to Av, which are based on the Heipach of Avas Yisrael, Aaron HaKohen lived, and he gave a koyach to all Yidden, as it's brought out in his passing away, and the koyach that comes from that day specifically, that all Yidden should get a koyach from him for Avas Chinam, which is a way to reverse, to change over the Chodesh HaGolos, the Tzaros HaGolos, the Nisyani HaGolos into Gula. It should be Lumata Masar Tvachim in a revealed way. The Beheim Zaloichet Verstehen. Torah teaches us that whenever the Eibishter, whenever Hashem gives a Yid a challenge, an Nisayon, a difficulty, as it says in the Chumash, Ki minas Hashem Elokeinu eschem, l'das. Hashem is not giving tzadis for the sake of tzadis. In other words, the notion that the Eibishter gives people difficulties for no reason is certainly wrong. But even the notion that Hashem gives a Yid difficulties, because Kvayachal Hashem is angry, and Hashem is, even though it says explicitly in the Chumash, Venake, Hashem is vengeant, Hashem takes revenge, Hashem punishes, is also not the whole truth, The truth is that every einish, every punishment, every challenge that Hashem gives Yidden, and if we have a challenge, it comes from Hashem because He's the only Balabayas, has a pnimius, has a deeper dimension. And the deeper dimension is always that from the bad should come a greater good, like the Lashon and Pasuk, Me'az Yetzei Mosek. From the Az, from the mighty, from the what's the word Az? From the strong. Strength. Az also connotes a certain arrogance, a certain chutzpah. Yetzei Mosek, from this itself comes the sweetness. And every challenge that Hashem gives Yidden, the challenge is not only a punishment, chas v'shalom, but it actually brings about a tikkun. And this morning I was teaching someplace else, and I came up with a good raya, interesting raya to this. I probably mentioned it in the past, but I don't think I've mentioned it here. You all know that if a person has done certain avedas, there's a death penalty. Right? In Torah, there's capital punishment, there's dalud mises. How was the death penalty, how were people put to death? So there was a bezdin, who shoved away the who paskined, who judged and determined whether this person is chayev or zakai. And the halachas are, it says in Chumash, that if a person was accused of doing an act, let's say Rahman San, he killed a person, so you needed to have a majority of 2 to make the person chayev, to give the person the death penalty, and you need only a majority of 1 to make the person zakai, make the person meritus, not to kill that person. But there's a very strange halacha, and the halacha is that say there's a bezdin, and din in the parshas was 23. You had to have 23 dayanim and a bezdin to paskin a case of chaim and mogus, and all 23 dayanim said chayev. Everyone, all 23 unanimously said this person is guilty, he's liable, and he should get the death penalty. The halacha, ironically, was that under those conditions he didn't kill him. If 22 said chayev and 1 said zakeh, the person would be killed. If all 23 said chayev, they all said guilty, they didn't kill the person. Why not? Does that make sense? Madach, if fewer dayanim say chayev, but if you have a roiv anika, you have more than 2 judges, more lechayev, the person is killed. Here all 23 judges are giving you the same verdict. How can you not put the person to death? There's all kinds of explanations. And one of the explanations is pashut, that a person who was killed in din Torah, not in din malchus, but in din Torah, misasei was kaparosei. His misa, his dying, his being killed was his kapara. In other words, when he went to Yenevelt, he didn't have to pay for that aveda. It was cleaned away. The misa, the death by bezdin, removed the pagam, the spiritual blemish that was brought onto that person as a result of whatever chet they had committed. If a person is so guilty that not one dayan can find a schus, can find a merit for this person, and you should know the halacha is that the dayan was supposed to look for his schus, v'yitzil, they're supposed to look for ways out. If a person is so guilty, then killing that person in bezdin would not constitute kapara. They would not be forgiven for their aveda. And if that's the case, you're not allowed to kill him. Because if the killing is not for kapara, doesn't have a good effect, stamazei tahagen, and I mentioned, even the person is guilty, and they deserve a einish, Torah doesn't give an anshim like that. The Eibishter and Torah's anshim, the punishment, every single punishment in Torah is simultaneously a tikkun, has to have a good purpose. And if it's the person's death will not also be kapara, you're not allowed to kill that person. And this is how Hashem functions, that all of the nisyanis, all the tzaras that we see are on a superficial level, they're puranias, they're punishment. But by the Eibishter, there's no such thing as puranias. Every puranias is a tikkun, right? In America, they call jails houses of correction. That's what they call them. They don't correct anything or anybody, but that's what they're called. And it's a very appropriate name, because al pi Torah, every einish is supposed to be correction. You don't stam as they punish. There's no point in that. The Eibishter created a vashafanish, he created something, he wants it to exist. And if he wants it to exist, it has to be good. If it's not in order and it has to be corrected, and correction is painful, so be it. But it's correction, it's not stam destruction. And the same is true, of course, when it comes to this time of the year, the Bein HaMetzarim, and we think about the Churban Habayis, and we more than any other time of the year desperately want Mashiach to come down. We should see Taka Mashiach Tzatiyanu B'nei Basar. In other words, Mashiach is not something that's out there in the distance, that's something exotic that we don't consider real. Every Jew believes that Mashiach has to come now, and he could come now, we want him to come now, and we anticipate Mashiach Taka now, Tanemes. But the process leading up to Mashiach, which is the process of Golus, which is Mipnei Chat'einu, is not Chas v'Shalom only Einish. Hashem is angry, and he's punishing the Jewish people, Chas v'Shalom. That's not the Eibishter. The Eibishter is Kel Racham v'Chanan. It's a process of Chesed that's Angetan, that has a form of Gevura as a way of being Mesaker and of correcting Yidden and bringing them to a higher Madrege. And as a result, when it comes this time of the year, as we mentioned last week, it isn't only that we're commemorating the Churban, we're also commemorating or experiencing the fact that this time is a part of the process that brings Mashiach Tzidkenu. It says in the Medrash that the moment Eibush destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, Mashiach was born. Because that's the reason for the Churban. The Churban is the Yidden Tzedach Aliyah, the birth of Mashiach. And therefore, when it comes to 3 weeks, and the Shulchan Aruch puts limitations upon us, and there's halachas of Avelis, and so on and so forth, a Yid knows that the pnimius of this challenge is not the challenge itself. The pnimius of this challenge is that Mashiach should come, we should bring Mashiach. And when that happens, as we mentioned last week, the tainus is not only removed, the tainus becomes a Yom Tiv. Why does tainus become a Yom Tiv? Because we see then, in hindsight, that the Churban brought about the greater good of Mashiach, and whether this is understandable or not not this has to be the case. Mashiach is so worthwhile. Mashiach is such a great condition of existence. The Golus was worthwhile. As we say at this moment, nobody can accept that. We're not allowed to accept that. But after the fact, it says in Pasuk that after Mashiach comes, we look back at the Golus and we see how it was all worthwhile. And as a result, the 3 weeks are not only sad, but they're also in an indirect way happy. We're sad because of the matzah that we're in. And we're also aware that this difficult matzah brings to a much, much greater good matzah. Which explains an interesting Chassidishe Torah that I'm just going to mention. And last year I spoke about it the whole time, and I'm just going to mention it. This Shabbos is the Shabbos before Tisha B'Av. And by the way, Shabbos Devarim is always the Shabbos before Tisha B'Av. And in Mitzvah Shem we'll talk about it. With Nebish himself. Or with the hill from the Mzei Gerecht. And it's called Shabbos Chazayin. Because the 3 Shabbos of the 3 weeks, and there are always 3 Shabbos in the 3 weeks, sometimes there could be 4. If Shiva B'Tammuz is Shabbos and Tisha B'Av is Shabbos, you have 4, but we don't consider Shiva B'Tammuz the first. We consider Tisha B'Av the third. We read Shloisha de Puranusa. Right? There's 3 Haftarahs that we read of Puranias. They talk about Puranias, painful things. And then after Tisha B'Av, beginning with parshas V'Aschana, we have 7 Shabbos till Rosh Hashanah, and we read the Shiva de Nechemta, the 7 Haftarahs that speak about Inyanim of Nechama, of consolation. Beginning, of course, with Nachamu Ami. The third of the Shloisha, the Puranusa, is Chazayin Yeshayahu ben Omitz. Right? Chazayin Yeshayahu, the vision, the prophecy of Yeshayahu. It's interesting that we read about Yeshaya closer to Tisha B'Av. The Haftarah of Yirmiyah, which is much more bitter, we read the earlier Shabbos. The Shabbos right before Tisha B'Av, you're reading about Yeshaya. And the difference between Yeshaya and Yirmiyah, Yeshaya was much further removed from the Churban. So Yirmiyah spoke about the word Yirmiyah means bitter. Yeshaya's Nevuas, even though they also speak about Tzaddis and the Churban, are much more positive. And the Shabbos before Tisha B'Av, we don't read Chazayin of Yirmiyah, we read Chazayin of Yeshaya. So the Shabbos is called Chazayin Yeshayahu, Shabbos Chazayin, the Shabbos of Chazayin. And this is Ahmed Dabar, all Yidden know the Shabbos before Tisha B'Av, Shabbos Chazayin. The Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Baditchev had gesagt, he said, he was a big tzaddik. He said that the reason Shabbos Chazayin is called Shabbos Chazayin, because on the Shabbos before Tisha B'Av, Hashem shows all Yidden the third Beis HaMikdash. The word Chazayin means to see. Right? Choyze, Raya, all means to see. And Chazayin, the parshas that Chazayin Yeshayahu means what Yeshaya saw. The Baditchev it doesn't mean what Yeshaya saw, but what the Eibishter shows us. The Shabbos before Tisha B'Av, the Eibishter shows every single Yid the third Beis HaMikdash. And the Baditchev explained it with a mashal. And the mashal is about a father a king who has a tailor make for his son, the prince, a very, very special, a very precious, a very sophisticated outfit, costume. And he gives it to his child, and the child runs around in it, and he tears it up, he ruins it. So the father has the tailor prepare a second one. And again, the child is still immature, is young, underdeveloped, and the child plays in it and runs around in it, and he ruins it. So the father has the tailor prepare a third one. But this time he doesn't give it to the child. He puts it in a closet and he closes the door. And from time to time he shows his little boy this outfit, and he says, when you will be a mensch, when you'll be grown up, when you'll be mature, when you know how to appreciate clothing of this quality, I'll give it to you. And the Baditchev said that this is a mashal for Shabbos Chazayin. That every year, the Shabbos before Tisha B'Av, which L'chaida is the Shabbos of the greatest time of Avelis, the Eibishter also shows us the greatest thing in of Simcha. That associated with this Shabbos is also seeing the third Beis HaMikdash. Because, as we mentioned earlier, the 3 weeks are not just sad. It's a process of tikkun, of correction. That the only reason why the Eibishter puts us through this is because there should be a greater gila, the Mashiach and the Simcha of Mashiach. If it wouldn't be that way, the suffering for the sake of suffering, even for the sake of punishment, is not a part of the Eibishter's program. As we illustrated it from this halach, that that if every dayan says guilty, you don't punish the person, because if it's not going to bring the person to a higher level, there's no point. And therefore, Taka, the same Shabbos, which is closest to Tisha B'Av, and you would think we're closest to Avelis, we have the greatest closeness to the third Beis HaMikdash. Now the problem is, from my recollection last year, I didn't see it, I missed it, but that's a chisaron in the Gavra, not in the Chefza. In other words, when the Eibishter shows the third Beis HaMikdash, by big tzaddikim they should see it. By us, except those of us in the Shum, of course, who are very big tzaddikim, but they've already told me they want to remain nister, so we'll honor their secrecy. But besides them, we don't see. But Mazai Chassid, the Neshama sees, and the Neshama feels, and it gives a koyach. It gives a koyach to change over the Avelis into Simcha. In other words, that we should do our little portion of bringing Mashiach, which begins with Avas Chinam, Avas Yisrael. And I also want to mention again the point mentioned last week. It's such a, you say this like a Chassidishe Torah. Chassidus has a whole new look at everything, especially at the 3 weeks. There's a story with the Ruzhner. I've told the story before, probably last year and probably the year before. But the Heilige Ruzhner, he was a Chassidische Rebbe and he had real Chassidim. And when it came Tisha B'Av, B'chlal by Chassidim, in Tisha B'Av hat zu viel nicht mehr Hader gewesen. Chassidim were not very firm about Tisha B'Av. And the Ruzhner Chassidim, Tisha B'Av they didn't take as seriously as Rosh Hashanah and Kippur, to put it mildly. So Tisha B'Av in the afternoon they weren't able to learn. So what are you going to do? So they played a game. The original Beis Medrash was dark. It was afternoon, he says, before Mincha, after Mincha. And a bunch of Chassidim took a chair and they put it in the middle of the Beis Medrash in a very conspicuous spot. And they attached the chair to strings, to a pulley system. And they stood in the Weibishol, in the Yarik, and they waited for the next victim, the next culprit to walk into the Beis Medrash. A person who would walk in, who would want to sit down, would sit down on that chair. It was in the perfect location. And as soon as they would sit down, they would pull him up to the second floor with the strings. But the Rebbe geholfen, the Ruzhner Alein, the Heilige Ruzhner himself walked into the Beis Medrash, and he sat down on the chair, and they gave him a ride. And when he came up to the second floor, it's a net, they didn't drop him, if you're asking me. And they were very, Chas v'Shalom, they should do such a head that I covered. It wasn't Bechlal, that they should do something like this. And the Ruzhner said, Rabbeinu Shalom, it gegeben, du hast gegeben deine Kinder a Yom Tov. Und sie haben das nicht halten, nehmen es bei sich zu. You gave your children a Yom Tov. He says a Yom Tov, it's time to cry. And they're not zohir, they're not so nizir, take it away from them. And you know it says in this, the previous Rebbe told the Rebbe, now that the Rebbe's diary has been public, been printed, so it's written there that the Friedrich Rebbe told the Rebbe that Chassidim on Tisha B'Av played around, they think Vav and Beralach, and says nish gewen shaloi b'tzein chachamim. The Rebbe knew that on Tisha B'Av is nish mahad and avelis, and the Rebbe accepted it. What the Rebbe did is his business. Just one more story to put a balance into this. It's a good story to tell. Reb Shlomo Karliner, everybody heard the name of Shlomo Karliner. Reb Shlomo Karliner once came to the Alter Rebbe, to Liozne, for Tisha B'Av. Mistama was there for a Meshach Zman, he was there Tisha B'Av also. And the Chassidim were throwing those burrs, those prickly things, Berelach. You remember? You're not too old for it. Okay, but in the city, where are you going to find it? A kitze, they should sell them on the 14th, 15th, whatever it is, 13th Avenue, out of Tisha B'Av, don't forget from Berelach. A kitze, you can make a killing. And it's a very good business. A kitze, one of the Berelach accidentally landed in the beard of Rav Shlomo Karliner. He was very upset, very, very upset. And he turned to the Alter Rebbe and he said to the Alter Rebbe, because of such younger light, such chutzpahniks, the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. And the Alter Rebbe didn't answer him. The next day, in the afternoon, he says, Noch halben Tag, the Alter Rebbe said to Reb Shlomo that he wants to take a walk with him. And they walked out of the Yozne, and they walked into the trees and the fields outside of the Yozne, and they heard a Yid saying Kinnis, Eicha, with Gewalt Kepchias. A Yid was crying for the Beis Hamikdash, Abim Tanemis. And as they got closer and closer, they saw a Yid sitting on the ground, on a nest of ants, and he was saying Kinnis and Eicha with unbelievable Bechia, So Reb Shlomo Karliner says to the Alter Rebbe, und zu lieber solche junge Leid wird aufgebaut werden, der Beis HaMikdash. For such young Leid, the Beis HaMikdash will be rebuilt. So the Alter Rebbe said, das ist derselbe junge man. It's the same one. The same. Last night in Shul, think about from Benelach. Okay. But in any event, by Chassidim, the approach to Tisha B'Av was more to see Tisha B'Av as a day where we wait for Mashiach, rather than a day where we mourn the Churban Beis HaMikdash. Because when you mourn the Churban Beis HaMikdash, one of the worst things that can happen when a person cries is that they enjoy crying. If you enjoy crying, it'll be a problem. God forbid, the Eibush will build the Beis HaMikdash and take away this wonderful Yom Tov of self-pity from us. Self-pity is a great pleasure. But of course, nobody should misunderstand that Chas v'Shalom you can compromise the Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch you have to do exactly as it's written. You cannot say that Shulchan Aruch says you have a chiyuv of avelos and I'm a chassid, so I'm not nizir Chas v'Shalom. But within the framework of what the Shulchan Aruch allows, by Chassidim there was always this attitude, as I was starting to tell you, of mishenichnas of mematin b'simcha. Right? The Gemara says, and it's brought in Shulchan Aruch, that mishenichnas of when of comes mematin, we have to make less simcha. So some Chassidishe Rebbe, I don't even know which, said mishenichnas of mematin, of comes, and you want to take away the avelos of is b'simcha, because simcha, joy, is a keli for Hashras Hashchinim. When a Yid is freilach, he's closer to the Eibishter. That's a fact. When a Yid is sad, he's further away from the Eibishter. And when a Yid is freilach, he's closer to the Eibishter. And as a result, if you want to bring back a closeness between Hashem and Yidden, and that's what the Beis HaMikdash is, and that's what Hashras Hashchinim is, it's Akeh b'simcha. But in any event, so the 3 weeks is a time of Purani Yistake, it's a time of Beina Mitzadim, of challenge, but it's also a time when we know that this is the basis for all the good things that are going to happen when Mashiach is revealed, when Mashiach comes. And again, B'Hashgacha Pratis, you see the preciseness of the connection between the parshas HaShavua and the time of the year. As we mentioned, parshas Devarim is always Shabbos Chazai, the Shabbat before Tisha B'Av. What is parshas Devarim about? The whole parsha from the beginning to the end. It's Moshe Rabbenu giving Klal Yisrael mussar. That's what it is. Teichacha. Like Rashi says in the very first pasuk in the parsha, Eila Dvar Mashdiba Meisha, right? Achad the second pasuk. Achad as Yem Echediv Daten Vehi Da'ashtu as Chodesh Bechad LaChodesh Ba'midbar Ba'arava Meil Suf Bein Paran Bein Tevel V'Lava V'Chatzeres V'Dizah. Right? That in the first pasuk in Parshas Devarim, Moshe Rabbenu is giving Yidden mussar. Where? In 10 places. Ba'arava, Ba'midbar, Meil Suf Bein Paran Bein Tevel V'Lava V'Chatzeres V'Dizah. Either they're in one place or in another. So Rashi says that this is an emes, that Moshe Rabbenu was giving Yidden Teichacha. He was giving mussar. And he was giving them mussar, he was starting off his mussar by mentioning the names of the places where Yidden were maches, where Yidden angered the Eibishter. On the Yam Suf, and in the Midbar, by the Mon, and by the Slav, and by the Egel, etc., etc., etc. But in any event, Parshas Devarim, from start to finish, is the Teichacha, is the mussar, that Moshe Rabbenu is giving Klal Yisrael. And the fact that it comes out before Tisha B'Av is so precise because the whole union of the 3 weeks is the Eibush as Hashem's form of Teichacha. Because as we mentioned, the purpose of the 3 weeks, what's the purpose of giving a person mussar? To make a person feel bad? Absolutely not. The purpose of giving a person mussar is to make a person better their ways. And if giving the person mussar doesn't translate into making the person's ways better, all you've done is hurt another Jew. So mussar, like the mussar that the Eibishter gives, the Puranius, cannot be that the end of it is tam, a Yid should be in pain. The end always is the good that's going to come from it. And that's the theme really of the entire Parshas Devarim, and in a bigger sense, the whole of Sefer about Devarim, and certainly the first couple of Parshas, where Moshe Rabbenu is giving Klal Yisrael mussar. He's giving Klal Yisrael mussar. And again, the purpose of giving them mussar is not to make them feel bad, but to encourage them to be as they're supposed to be. And I want to talk a little bit about this whole process of teichacha, of giving other people rebuke. Everybody knows that it's a mitzvah saseh, right? To indicate chesed to another person in a way that will help that other person be better yid, and And there's all kinds of halachas about techocha. The underlying halacha about techocha is that it has to have an effect. I mean, even though it says in Shulchan Aruch you're supposed to give the techocha no matter what, but that leisisna zechicha b'valvecha it says leisisa alav chet, right? That's the right word. Leisisa alav chet, stam, to make a person in pain and it shouldn't have an effect. The Gemara doesn't encourage that either. So I just want to read to you a few Gemaras here. This is a Gemara which talks about the whole process of giving people mussar. And they're good Gemaras to know. And the bottom line is, if you want to cut to the chase and you want to, so to speak, get to the essence of it is, B'chlal, it's healthy for a Jew to be smart. Now, on the other hand, we say it's healthy for a Jew not to think too much. That's also true. He has to have emunah not to be such a chacham, because sometimes the chachma leads to armumius. Armumius means we get too smart for ourselves and then we go crooked. We get out of touch. But they're not a contradiction. When it comes to emunah, a Yid is like a child. But within the framework of emunah, a Yid is a kluger. A Jew has to be smart. And smart means you have to have what's called in the Welt, the fifth Chelik Shulchan Aruch, common sense. But the expression is vu ein and vu eis. Where yeah and where no. This doesn't mean compromise. It just means to think. Not to be, pardon the French, stupid. And just, you're supposed to do this, so I'm going to do it. It's not going to have the desired effect. It's going to have a negative effect. It's going to accomplish nothing. There's a certain wisdom in life. There's a certain wisdom in a Yid. And a place where this becomes very apparent is the whole process of Eichocha. And I'm speaking here to mothers. Some of the people here are already grandmothers. But nevertheless, the hardest Eichocha in the modern time, in this world, in the so-called world where, like it says in the Gemara, Bas kama be'ima, an isha b'chamaisa, a daughter rebels against her mother, and a isha, a woman against her mother-in-law. This is a Gemara at the end of Seita about the time before Mashiach. One soll wissen, if you need it, only by Mashiach, just read that Gemara about all the negative things time before Mashiach. Wir wissen, man halt mamish by the time before Mashiach. In the negatives, are gor mahadir. Hidul mahadrin mina mahadrin. Okay, but whatever the case is, it's one of the most difficult things is to educate your own child. Jedem's kind is geringer. The meganim kind is shredder. There's deeper reasons for it, and there's also simple reasons for it. And if you don't mind my honesty, I'll tell you. The reason it's hardest to educate our own children on a very simple level is because our children know us best. And because they know us best, they know exactly how big a tzaddik we are. The child next door doesn't know us as well, so he has more respect for us. In other words, if we want to make it easier to mechanech our children, we should be the way we're supposed to be. Dugma chaya, the chinuch by example, which is not enough, but it's a basis. As mizalein v'medav, if we are as we're supposed to be, then our children have that acheres. Right? It says in the Gemara, V'yipol upon of Maro Emesra, Moshe Rabbenu fell in his face. Says the Gemara. Why? He saw the truth. Everybody has that acheres farnemes. If we are mitanemes, even our own children, but the Gemara says that to bring Mashiach v'keinu, that mahad is in chutzpah, bas kama v'ima, if it's mitanemes, then we defy this union, and it's much easier to mechanech our children if we're consistent within ourselves. And that's hard. It's a lot easier to tell another person how they're supposed to be than to do it ourselves. But in any event, the whole process of techocha and mussar, it's not taking a hammer and pounding. It's the work of a umnus, to know how to say something to another person in a way that it should be accepted. And as Rashi Taka says, from Moshe Rabbenu we learned certain things. Moshe Rabbenu did certain things in his process of techocha that indicate that he wasn't stam coming to the Yidden, he called them all together, screamed at them. Moshe Rabbenu was very tactful in the way he gave them mussar. Okay, let's talk about Moshe Rabbenu first. Number one, before he gave them mussar, he delivered the goods. That means to say, before he gave them mussar, he conquered the Eretz Yichavei. Moshe Rabbenu showed them the nisim v'neflois that the Eibishter was intending to do for them in Kibush, in the conquest of Eretz Yisrael, and they saw it. So they knew this is no longer an emunah, a theoretical belief, that one day David is going to show us wonders. Moshe showed it to them. Before he did that, he wouldn't give them any mussar. Number 2, he didn't give the mussar until near his death. Why? Because he didn't want to be meichicham. You don't give mussar more than once. It's also something which I once heard from a very wise person. Never tell somebody something that they know already. And when it comes to mussar and hechacha, that's why the child says, my mother is such a nudge. Why is she a nudge? She told me yesterday and last week. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't nudge, but this is why hechacha, why giving mussar, is something that requires wisdom. It requires not just emunah, but chochmah. You have to. There's an umness to it. Darf sein klug, darf sein zugetragen, and you can't react. A lot of times the situation is we see a situation and we react, and the reaction was maybe our emotion, but it wasn't something that the other person was able to hear. So the second thing that Moshe Rabbenu does was that he only gave the mussar near death. And as Rashi mentions, that's what Yaakov Avinu did, and that's what Shmuel HaNavi did, and that's what David HaMelech did. In Tanakh you see that all the instances of hechacha that are recorded were always samach l'misa. And another thing which has in certain Sfarim is, how did Moshe Rabbenu give the mussar? He just sat down and told them a story. It happened to be the story of their lives. That's all he had to do. And at the big chazit, he said, gather together, and as Rashi says, Moshe Rabbeinu made sure that every Yid would be present, that no chutzpah can say, if I would have been there, I would have answered him. And Moshe Rabbeinu told them a story. He didn't even tell them the story outright, he hinted to it. So Moshe Rabbenu, so to speak, allowed a Yid to hear what he was saying without putting up the natural defenses that a person would normally do when they're being told that they're a piece of garbage. It was done with a lot of tact, with a lot of chokhmah. And it resulted, that it says in Tanakh, and it's brought in Chazal, that the whole generation of Yeshua, Yidden, went in the ways of Moshe Rabbenu because of the techacha, because of the mussar that Moshe Rabbenu gave. And he says, we can learn from Moshe Rabbenu himself that giving mussar has to be done with a pikris, with a chokhmah. You should know about the Eibishter. Now we're talking the time of the Eibishter's mussar. The Eibishter also does with a chokhmah. It says in Sfarim, it's not a pleasant thing, but the Eibishter never gives Yidden too many tzaras one after another. If he gives them a tzara, then there's a matzav of revach. To understand Hashem's cheshbonus is impossible. But that's the Metzias. It's not all bad. The majority of the experiences of most Yidden in most situations of Golos are bearable, are manageable. But in any event, I want to read a few Gemaras, short little Gemaras, which help illustrate this. Unfortunately, the lighting and the awesome size of this Gemara are very conducive to being able to read. But this is the Gemara. Okay? Amar Abtarfan says, Tama ani, I wonder, Im yesh b'deir hazeh shemekabel techacha. If there's anybody in this generation who is able to hear techacha, somebody should give him mussar and they should take it. And he explains what he means. Im amalei tul kisim mi beininecha. If Reuven says to Shimon, tul kisim, remove a kisim. A kisim means a little twig, a little spindle of wood, mi beininecha, from between your eyes. I'll tell him, the Gemara says and the Gilon says shinecha, between your teeth. Remove the beam from between your eyes. What does this mean? Reuven comes to Shimon and he says, Shimon, I noticed this chassadan. So Shimon says to Reuven, you're worried about my small chassadan? Your chassadan is 1,000 times as big as mine. You're worried about a toothpick between my teeth. You have a beam between your eyes. Meaning to say, your aveda is 1,000 times worse than mine. So if Reuven wants to give Shimon teichach, instead of helping Shimon out, clapping cup. Then there's another Gemara. And the Gemara says exactly the opposite. To me, honey, I wonder, I I wonder if there's somebody who knows how to give Eichocha. In other words, a Tafin says what we all know, that we don't want to hear our own faults. The Rabbi Joseph ben Azariah says the Edel thing. That was the whole Mahus of Rabbi Joseph ben Azariah. Rabbi Joseph ben Azariah was a Koyin Take, an Inik of Narna Koyin Ish HaChesed, and his whole Sutrit to Avodas Hashem, like the Gemara says, that he opened up the doors of the Beis Medrash, let everybody come in to learn, is one of Chesed. And Rabbi Joseph ben Azariah said the Chesed is not in the one who is receiving the mussar, but the one who is giving the mussar. You need a certain kind of pikches, a certain kind of wisdom, to know how to say something in a way that doesn't hurt another person, but it's niskaba by another person. And you know what? Sometimes the deepest heichacha is what is not said. Not so much what you do say, but what you don't say. And finally, there's a third Gemara. And the third Gemara, so to speak, underscores both points together. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, hat Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri gesagt, I will attest the Shamayim V'Aretz, the heaven and the earth. Shahar be'pamim loka akiva al yadi. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri made Rabbi Akiva all kinds of trouble. Why? Because he says Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri used to go and indicate, point out to Rabbi Gamliel, who was Rabbi Akiva's Rebbe, faults in Rabbi Akiva. Says the Gemara, this is, I can't even read this. And the more I brought to Rabbi Akiva challenge, the more Rabbi Akiva liked me. It says in the Pasuk, don't give mussar to a lates. What do the lates mean? A jester, a person who laughs at everything because he's going to hate you. But if you give mussar to a chacham, to a wise person, then faket, that brings out ahava, right? It's called constructive criticism. Now, what I'm doing is I'm putting the information on the table, the nekudas on the table. That according to Torah, there is such a thing as, and it's a Yisayda Zekainian of Koyos Ha'arevim Zebezeh. Like the marshal that Rebbe used to bring years ago, of the people who are sitting on a boat, and one guy's making a hole in the bottom of his seat. So you come and you scream at him and you say, you're making a hole, we're going to drown. He says, but it's under my seat. What's the dynamic? Why is it your problem that I'm making a hole under my seat? Al Pi Torah, there's an arvus that we all were nichnas bebris in Eretz Yisrael, that we're responsible for one another. But at the same time, there's a balance between the need to love another Jew and the need to point out the fault in another Jew. And the difference is this: if you love another Jew and nothing comes of it, you loved another Jew and he didn't become brum. You've done a mitzvah to say you've loved another Jew. It's a mitzvah to love a Yid not because he's a tzaddik or because he's a beinani, but because he's a ben Yivram. On the other hand, if you are meichiach another Yid, if you criticize another Yid and you hated another Yid, and if it brings about the desired effect, it's matayv. If it didn't bring about the desired effect, what have you done? You've hurt another Jew, and that doesn't have a tayelas. And therefore, when it comes to the whole business of eichacha, there are those of us who are very American. And in America, what's the hidden mitzvah? Mind your own business, exactly. There's a boy who's wearing tefillin and he's getting ready for his bar mitzvah. His parents are sick, but they want to let him do whatever he wants. Okay? So if you're legging tefillin, now they just stop him. See, this is full circle. This is defeating the klipa with the klipa itself. So in the olden days, the Labavitch, they're going to convert us all. Now it's, I really wish they wouldn't convert us, but if my son wants to be converted, who am I to stop him? That's how far it's gotten. And the hemshech is, the story has an end. He was just in New York recently, so he has a pair of tefillin, and he went and he bought him a new zekulah. So the mother says to my shvaget, my brother-in-law, he says, I don't know why you're wasting money. After his bar mitzvah, he's not going to need these anymore. Anyways, okay. But in any event, there are those of us who have a philosophy of mind your own business, and that's pushed hepech HaTorah. And then there are those of us who walk around with a hatchet. In other words, it's indiscriminate bashing. Someone does something which lani is daiti, in my glorious opinion, is not Al Pi Torah, smash. And neither of these approaches are correct. And if I have to explain it, then no explanation is going to help. The key is azoi. being a Yid, as I mentioned before, doesn't mean you have to be stupid. Sincere, yeah. Tmimizdik, yeah. When it comes to Yoni Amunah, the Yid has no questions. But when it comes to living Yiddishkeit is Chachmaschem Benaschem Leni Am, like it says in Parshas Vayischanan next week. The Chachma, a Yid is a kluge. And sometimes the greatest Achacha is you just look with your eyes, you don't say anything. Or you laugh when a person has a certain weakness. Instead of screaming and shouting, you just throw a little bit of laughter into it. You show how stupid it is. Whatever it is, especially when it comes to children and the Mishnah, sometimes that's so much more effective than screaming and shouting and raising your hands and being lost. And it's not the taich that you're not doing the right thing. It's the taich that's nutzen seichel. But b'chalal in life, and especially in the chinuch of our children, it's extremely important that we use our intelligence. You know, the Rebbe speak about this a lot, that there's a phenomenon in America called a generation gap. A generation gap means the old and the young have no relationship. The old people are over the hill, they're from the old country, what do they know? And the young people, it's a naye welt. B'chalal, Yiddishkeit is by definition the defiance of the generation gap. It is. By definition, Yiddishkeit is the idea that the older teach the younger. And that's why we exist, because we have this chayach of chinuch, v'neinu arevim b'adeinu. But I'll tell you, I mean, something that I grew up with, that I saw, I mean, I knew not many, but a few, Chassidim from the old country. And the bigger the Chassid. And that means to say, the less I had in common with him, the holier he was. But the pikchas of these Alter Chassidim, the wisdom that they had, made it so that even though he was in a totally different world than I was, or than somebody is, in terms of Avodas Hashem, and in terms of everything, there was no generation gap at all. Because this person was frum and klug. He was frum and Chassidishe, but he was smart. And he knew how to say what needed to be said to each person. And it's important, in other words, to start giving chinuch classes. I'm not qualified. I have over here, Shani handed me a note. Can you please take questions after the shiur? And the answer is probably no, because I'm not going to be able to answer them. I'm not trying to offer to bring it down. I said maybe. We'll see. Okay. The point is that there's chokhmah involved, not just malach involved. And the simplest advice, and this I can say, and this I don't think needs to be said, or I really should say, everybody knows that we need to be reminded of it, is there's nothing wrong with getting advice, help from somebody else. And sometimes a little wisdom is worth a little intelligence is worth more than 1,000 pounds of aggression and power and force. Not that you're not being meichiach, but you're being meichiach in an effective way. And I'll give you a nekudah, which is really a yesodistic nekudah in Chassidus. Chassidus approaches a Yid with the attitude, I'm not trying to convert you. I'm not trying to give you something. I'm trying to give you what is really yours already. When you meet a Yid that's on 5th Avenue, Manhattan, who doesn't keep Shabbos, Achman Litzlan, that's understandable. You come into this Yid and say, I'm not trying to convert you to Judaism. I'm trying to tell you this is your heritage, know what you own. But it's true of our own children who learn in yeshiva and learn chassidus and who are from a younger light or from a kids, whatever the particulars are. The approach of chinuch is much more effective when the approach is, das ist deine, nicht meine, it's yours. I'm not trying to make you into what I am, this is yours. And this is where pikchas comes in, where wisdom comes in. Being sincere is very, very important, but being smart is not a contradiction to being sincere. But in any event, the reason I'm discussing this is I'm using the parshas, so to speak, as an excuse. The parshas HaShavua speaks about Moshe Rabbeinu's teichocha. And Rashi points out the chokhmah that Moshe Rabbenu employed in giving his mussar so that it should serve a purpose. Because the mussar doesn't serve a purpose, the Gemara says, what's the point? And this is something we need to understand in ourselves, and this is, you should know, this is where the senior citizens in America, the minig is plus elter als narisher. This is in America. Once you're past 30, you're over the hill. You're an old man. You're stupid. But in Torah, and this is a fact, above Baba and Azeda sometimes, not always, but sometimes, just has a different wisdom, a different maturity. A mother or father sometimes gets so upset when things are not the way they should be that they forget that there's a life, there's a big picture. And a Baba and Azeda sees things from a distance. It's a clarity and a wisdom that comes from agonizing over their own kids, that gives them a clarity and an ability to see. You're doing your child more of a disservice by getting upset than forget. You're encouraging the behavior, rather than by approaching it more with a laughter or with a softness and so on and so forth. Okay, now, since I'm supposed to answer questions, so instead of answering the questions, I'll tell the story. It's easier. What's the story about? Does anybody remember? Oh, which one? Oh, here's the story. There was a Jew who had a difficult life. And years before, as a young man, he had been a Yosim, he had made a resolution that he would never ever ask Hashem for anything. He would never say, Eibishter, give me a need. The Eibishter knows what he's doing, the Eibishter will give him everything he needs. A kid said, he had a krechme. A krechme means a hotel, but it didn't belong to him. He had not ended. He had paid a rent to a portage for his hotel, for his inn, whatever it is. And every year he used to pay his rent and sustain his family. He was no millionaire, to put it mildly. One year he had a difficult year, and he was having a great difficulty paying his rent. And in the middle of all this, the Baal Shem Tov shows up with a minyan talmidim. Baal Shem Tov comes to this man's house with a minyan, with 10 talmidim. And they come into the house, and this Yid knew who the Heilige Baal Shem Tov was, and there couldn't be a greater honor than having the Baal Shem Tov in the house. And the Baal Shem Tov says, "Me will nessen. We want to eat." So he took out whatever he had in the house, and it wasn't that much, and he made a feast, a decent meal, and he fed them. And when they finished eating, the Baal Shem Tov says, "You have nothing else to eat, we're still hungry." So he had a cow which provided milk for his family. He had one cow. And he had Mesiras Nefesh from the Baal Shem Tov. He shechted the cow and he brought them to eat. They ate up the cow, and the Baal Shem Tov says, "You have nothing else to eat?" A kid said the guy pawned his pillows and his blankets and his leichter. The Baal Shem Tov and his 10 talmidim, they were plotting the stamina like the cane with the kachim, and they ate the guy clean. When they left the house, there was nothing in the house except walls. They finished eating. The Baal Shem Tov gave him a grace and dying. "Thank you very much for the achnas. The food was very tasty and abundant." They left. The Baal Shem Tov didn't offer to pay, and he wasn't going to ask. A kid said that night, it was bad enough before the Baal Shem Tov walked into his house, and now the house is bare. But so he starts davening Ma'ariv, and when it came to Borech Aleinu, which of course is the bracha Shmoneh, where we ask for Parnasa, he couldn't contain himself, and he cried. In other words, he had made a hachlata that he's never asking the Eibishter for anything, and he cried. Before he finishes the bracha, someone's knocking on his door. And he goes to the door, and there's an old drunken guy. A guy who was a regular in his tavern. I mean, this was a Jewish. I thought Yidden made a living selling bramfin to drunks. That's how a Jew made a living in Eastern Europe. It's a fact. That just gives you an illustration of the difficulties of life. That a Jew dealt with a drunk. That's what they had. They had these taverns, and guys come in after a day's work and then they had to worry about fights and about damage and getting him home and then getting paid. It wasn't because Jewish people were chas v'sholem. There was no other way to feed a family, Pashka. And he opened the door, and this guy staggers and says, "I need a drink. I must have a drink, and I'm willing to pay you good money." He said, "I have nothing in the house. I have nothing." He says, "Listen, do you have downstairs in the basement a barrel that once contained bramfin?" He says, "Yeah, but it's empty." He says, "Take water and stir it around. It should taste like a bit of the truppen, and I'll pay you for it." So he goes downstairs and he puts water into the barrel and he swirls it around and he brings him the drink and he drinks it down. The best bramfin he ever tasted. And he gives him a coin and he leaves. The coin was old and muddy, and he cleans the coin, and it was a golden coin. With this gold coin, he was able to buy back all that he had pawned the whole afternoon feeding the Baal Shem Tov. Kol Talmidim. Anyway, the next night the guy again comes in and he wants dafke the bram from that empty barrel, and again, every night he comes in, he has his drink of water, and he gives him a gold coin. After a couple of weeks, the guy tells him like this: "You're probably wondering where I have these coins from." He says, "I'll tell you. I found the treasure with hundreds of such coins. And I'll tell you the truth, I'm an old man. I'm going to die soon. And my daughter threw me out of the house because I drink," which was true. So B'meila, I don't want to give her this oitzer. So I'm going to make a deal with you. If you let me move into your attic, and every day you'll give me water from this empty barrel, and you'll sustain me until I die, I'll give you the whole treasure. It sounded like a good deal, so they went out into the forest, they dug up a chest of gold coins, and this Jew became rich in a minute. And the guy moved into the attic, and 3 months later he paid it, he died. Right? A while later, the Baal Shem Tov passes through again. He says, "Rebbe, wilt essen?" Now he had plenty to feed him. So the Baal Shem Tov had gesagt, "Azoi, you should know that I saw Lamaila, that you're supposed to become rich. But it wouldn't happen until you asked. And I knew that you're not going to ask. So I had to make you ask." So maybe we came to your house and we literally ate you out of your house. And this is the High Chodesh Baruch Hu Mesavel Tfilos and Shal Tzadikim. The Eibishter could give, but he wants them as better. He wants we should ask, because that's the Nachas Ruach the Eibishter gets. Okay, a good Avach, a good Shabbos.